Welcome, everyone, to the inaugural episode of The Blueprint, where we get inside the minds of people impacting our country and our world, including some of America's greatest business builders. Entrepreneurialism is in the DNA of Rockefeller Capital Management, dating back to the family founder, John D. Rockefeller. We're fortunate to have many entrepreneurs in the Rockefeller community, and we want to find out what makes them tick. Motivations, best practices, managing the wealth that comes along with success. Today, we're pleased to have John Hope Bryant as our first guest. John is the founder and CEO of Bryant Group Ventures and the Promise Homes Company, the largest minority controller owner of high-quality, single-family rental homes for low and middle-income consumers in the United States. John is also the founder and CEO of the renowned Operation Hope, the largest provider of financial literacy, inclusion, and economic empowerment tools and services to youth and adults in the nation. We're going to talk to John about both aspects of his life. Welcome, John.
I'm honored to be here.
Great to have you here.
Thanks for building a great institution on top of the foundation of a great leader. It's really quite amazing that this has not only lasted and thrived, but also expanded to beyond the family members, beyond the 400 recipients of Rockefeller's direct legacy. But now so many others, like myself, who benefit from a bit of the magic sauce. So thank you for doing what you're doing. It's really important.
I appreciate that. And you've nailed it. That's what we set out to do here, to take this great family name and legacy and expand it across the United States and take care of many families in the way that we've taken care of the Rockefeller family for a long time. I want to start with you and the beginning. You thought about business at a young age. You grew up and overcame many obstacles to be in the position that you're in today. Early on in life, not only were you successful on the business side, but you wanted to immediately give back, and that's the second half of your life. But let's start at the beginning and talk a little bit about the early years and what really created the momentum that's led to where you are today.
Well, first of all, it's very nice of you to say thank you. I was thinking the other day that I've gone from the bottom quartile of America's economic strata, the bottom 90%. I was never destitute. I didn't have a meal, but we did not have a home. We lost everything. I was homeless. We lived in Compton, California, in South Central LA growing up. But to go from that to technically the top 1% in the greatest experiment for democracy, freedom, and opportunity in the world, which is, with all our problems, a great country in the United States of America, I felt I had a responsibility, and even more of a responsibility as that arc crested, to give back and to pull others forward. And as I look back at my story, it's all made perfect sense, Greg. And in some ways, as I was coming here today, I thought, the world's had a king and now needs a rock. Rockefeller went from business to philanthropy. In many ways, and it's really quite a compliment to the spirit of those who are underserved. They've gone from philanthropy, even though they've not been treated well, still giving back, still serving. I mean, my second great grandfather was one of the black troops in the Union Army, staged in Memphis. He fought for freedom, even though he didn't have freedom. I mean, it's just such an inspiring narrative. So I've got fighting for justice in my bones. Growing up, my mother told me she loved me every day of my life, Juanita Smith. And I almost got teary-eyed just thinking about how powerful that is.
Very powerful. I've had the same fortune.
Yeah, I can tell. Self-esteem is different from confidence.
Yes.
Yeah. And my self-esteem came from my mother told me she loved me. There's a difference between being broke and being poor. Being broke is economic, but being poor is a disabling frame of mind, a depressed condition of your spirit, and you must vow never to be poor again. My mother somehow knew that innately, that she had to pour into me self-esteem. And so she told me she loved me, even though that she wasn't told she was loved by her mom and dad. So I had that sense of, yes, I am. And then my dad owned his own business, and I had a sense looking at him of, yes, I can. And so I didn't realize my mother hadn't been loved, and I didn't realize my father was financially illiterate. They gave me what they had, and it equipped me. And then they divorced over money. I was 5-ish years old, saw them fighting. I mean, number one cause for divorce is money. Number one cause for domestic abuse is money. Number one cause for heart attacks are stress. Number one cause for stress is money. And we owned an 8-unit apartment building in South Central LA. We owned our own home, cement contracting business, gas station. I mean, they were little conglomerate makers. And
There was real success there.
absolutely, with a high school education. But my dad wouldn't listen to my mother's wise counsel on building wealth. He could make the money. You make money during the day, as my friend Tony Ressler would say, who referred me to Rockefeller, by the way. You build wealth in your sleep.
Thank you, Tony.
I'll tell you, absolutely. I love Tony Ressler. You make money during the day, you build wealth in your sleep. And my mother was a great saver, but my dad wouldn't listen to her. And only in a relationship should the math not work. 2 + 2 has to equal more than 4. You got to be better together. And they were divorced. My mother went to go live with, she told me it was a relative, it was a girlfriend. The boyfriend of her girlfriend saved my life before I was 7. I was swallowing my tongue. It had fallen on this porch. I was waiting for him to come home. He became my hero. It saved my life, Greg. And I saw him murdered right in front of me by drug dealers who didn't like that he was making some extra income around the corner from our house. So he was riding a bicycle. And I'm 7 years old, and the truck hits him right in front of me.
On purpose.
Oh, intentionally.
Yeah.
Right in front of the house. So I and everybody else could see it, to send a message. That was about money. The divorce was about money. We moved to 15502 South Fraley Avenue in Compton, California, the home my mother purchased on her own, as she saved and worked. And my next door neighbor was a little drug dealer named Tweet. The friend down the street, George, who I wanted to be like, had excellent grades, but not good parents. I had great parents, but not great grades. And I wanted to be like George. He was really smart. He was smarter than me. But George didn't know who he wanted to be like. You said culture is really important in this place. Culture is everything.
Everything. It's the reason we've been so successful. Great people and culture, full stop.
It's everything. George had a really crappy culture. Wasn't his fault. Anyway, he ended up being murdered with my next door neighbor, Tweet, because he adopted Tweet's culture.
I have 3 children, I remind them of that because both of my grandfathers started working, one in the 3rd grade and one in the 8th grade. And a lot of it is just the world you come out of, the culture you're part of, as opposed to where my children and I are, as you said.
And your zip code.
And your zip code and everything else.
Steve Jobs was a Jordanian immigrant. His father, his birth father, did not want him. And they put him up for adoption to a wealthy family. And his mother was white. And the wealthy family decided they didn't want him. So the backup family got him. That was the Jobs family.
I didn't know that story. I quote him a lot because he was obviously so driven and really with the iPhone helped to change
the world.
The world. But he also, because he got sick and then he was in remission and was able to go on for some time, had great clarity of vision. He gave the Stanford speech and the speeches around.
Unbelievable.
Where he said, be in a job, and this is what I talk about here, where we want to be doing really great work with great people and a great culture, and that should be happy and motivating. He said, be in a job you really find stimulating and that you want. You have only one life to live. That's right. Why would you do something else?
And people, again, miss part of the story of the guy, one of the guys who changed the world. And this is a story that he was this immigrant person from this group that people, at least his own families, rejected. He ended up, by luck of the draw, at a zip code in Silicon Valley, around the corner by a brilliant guy named Wozniak. Together, they were better together. Together, they created a company called Apple, which has now changed the world, and everybody's replicating it, just like they did with Rockefeller. I mean, the guy who was 2 to 4% of America's GDP, Rockefeller. So these icons, and of course, there's women who also fit these modes. You have Madam C.J. Walker and all these sort of black and brown sheroes who also don't get the credit they deserve. But similar stories. Back to when I was 9, I went to school in Compton, and
now here you're back. You're living in the house that your mother had
it's
had
15502 South Fraley. My mom put the down payment for the house, working at McDonnell Douglas Aircraft at $15 an hour, and she part-time sold handicraft and candy at which her coworkers at work. So she had this entrepreneurial zeal as well.
But one of the things, just to interject, one of the things I'm struck by with you is the positive that you pull out the work ethic she had, the positive impact your father had. Some people could be talking about your history and say, well, my parents got divorced when I was 5, and how hard was that? And it's constantly, your constant emphasis is on, I was fortunate.
The Bible suggests, Greg, you really can't grow without legitimate suffering. And only through legitimate suffering do you grow. And I think that rainbows only follow storms. Not I think it's a scientific fact, actually. You cannot have a rainbow without a storm first. And so it is because of our problems and our challenges that we get refined, that we have an opportunity to learn, to grow. Education may come from a book, but wisdom comes from experiences. And you get to pull out what you want. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? Depending who's looking at the glass. Do you believe you can or you believe you can't? Well, you're right. And I just take no for vitamins. I mean, over it, around it, through it, I'm going to get to it. Nothing's going to stop me. And my background actually gives me a superpower over everybody else. When I was 9 years old, I had this, so thank you for what you said, by the way. My mother had given me this internal fortitude. And then I'd seen all this drama around me, and I knew what I didn't want. And I saw all this brilliance around me, but it wasn't planted in the right soil, right? And I went to school, and Ambassador Andrew Young, who was on that balcony when Dr. King was assassinated, my mentor, I just talked to him last night. He said, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. So I go to school, and this white banker, white shirt, red tie, blue suit, beautifully stitched suit, 6'2". He shows up, and he didn't want to be there. Community Reinvestment Act of 1977 had just come into play, and the bank managers told him, go teach financial literacy. Ugh. He comes to my school. You could look at his face. He came once a week for 45 days. The second week he comes, you kids aren't so bad. We're like, well, you're not so bad as a white dude. But I had never seen a white man in a suit unless it was the detective, and it was really a bad suit, or the principal of my school, or the teacher, in my school. I never seen a white man in a suit. This was a really beautiful suit. And finally, I had enough confidence. I think it was the second or third week. Excuse me, sir. You have a car outside with legal tags. You have a business card that says 16th floor. The only thing in the Compton that's 6th floor is a courthouse. You're here in the middle of the day. My mother would have to get a pass. She has 2 15-minute breaks and lunch. Unless I get in trouble, she's not coming to school in the middle of the day. You're here anytime you want. That's called a salary. You've got a white shirt. My father had a blue shirt. How'd you get rich illegally? I was dead serious.
And you asked this in front of the whole group.
Oh, God, yes. And he said, young man, I'm a banker and I finance entrepreneurs. I said, sir, I don't know what an entrepreneur is. I never heard that word in my entire life. French word, build something out of nothing. But whatever it is, if it's legal and you're financing it, I'm going to be one.
9 years old.
9 years old.
That's a great story.
So by the 4th session, I had asked my mother, this is the 4th week, I want to wear a suit. But she said, well, I can't afford to buy you a new suit, but you can wear the one I got you for Sunday church. Well, I did. Greg, that was a crushed velvet 3-piece suit. And I wore that suit to school, got beat up. So I learned the value of being alone because nobody wanted to hang with me. I looked like a dork. But eagles don't fly in packs. Just like your clients here. You never seen a flock of eagles. Not 1 ounce of my self-esteem was dependent upon somebody else's acceptance of me. I had my own dream, my own vision. I leave him, I open the dictionary, a Google search for this generation. I open the dictionary,
Yes.
the word entrepreneur. I'm like, oh my God. I go back and said, how many bankers are there in America? Are you the only one? He said, oh no, there's got to be hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. There's 10,000 banks in America back then. And your job is to loan me money, and I don't get dead if I don't pay you back. I was completely serious. This was like a Martian talking to me. He said, yeah, this is my job. And you're all across this country. So put that aside because that became Operation Hope. Put that aside. So I go home and I convinced my mother. I started seeing businesses everywhere now. The muffler shop was a business. The nail salon was a business. The liquor store was a business.
That's true. And that's actually one of the secrets. Sorry to interrupt, but in the United States, as you know, the job creation machine is small business still to this day. The huge percentage of employees in businesses with fewer than even 100 employees everywhere. And that work ethic where you go and you get your hair cut or the dry cleaner and is the fabric of the culture of the country. So please.
Magic of America.
Yes.
America's not a country, she's an idea.
Yes.
Right? And that is her. That is our special sauce. So anyway, I started the neighborhood candy house, and I went to the liquor store owner and tried to convince him to do a joint venture with me at 10 years old because I knew candy, I had cavities, and he just sort of dismissed me. And I love being underestimated. So I asked him a couple times. He tried to get me to be a salesman for him at the candy counter. I said, no, I don't want to be your salesman. I'll be your box boy. So I worked there for 3 weeks, learned where he got his inventory, quit, got a loan from my mother for $40, made $300 a week, put the liquor store out of the candy business. I was 10 years old. I was done. After that, I was done. I put the liquor store out of the candy business as 10 years old. And I gave the guy a shot. I said, be my joint venture partner. And essentially, everything I just told you is what I do in business to this day. I do joint ventures. I try to find a way to give a competitor a chance, the opportunity to become a good capitalist. If not, I'll put you out of business. I think that inclusive capitalism is more important. Good capitalism has to prevail over bad capitalism. Good capitalism is where I benefit, you benefit more. Bad capitalism is where I benefit, you pay a price for it, you being society. And so in Operation Hope is the manifestation of that banker providing capital, but I realized that underserved neighborhoods had bad credit scores, in many cases by no fault of their own. So we raising credit scores 54 to 100 points at Operation Hope, lowering debt $3,800, increasing savings $2,000 for somebody making $48,000 a year, which makes them bankable.
It's a parallel track where you've got success on the business side, and you immediately, and this is your upbringing, this is the story that everybody listening just heard, you immediately want to take it and do good with it in society, which is not, that's an instinct, that's an admirable instinct that doesn't exist everywhere. So but let's start with the business side and then we'll get to Operation Hope.
But by the way, what you just described is Rockefeller. What you described is every hero or shero who has had outside success is relationships are more important than transactions. What you give is much more important than what you get. And nobody's going to remember your Ferrari or your house or whatever. You die twice, physically, and the last time somebody mentions your name. The last time somebody mentions your name. That's about what you give. This is about trust, confidence, belief, faith, integrity.
All of those things.
Character, culture, right? What do people love? What do people want? Love, compassion, empathy, understanding. You can't touch any of those things. We're looking for love in all the wrong places. No wonder people are walking around dazed and depressed, because you're looking for love in literally all the wrong places. So at an early age, I had a sense of what was really real. And I started a bunch of businesses. Most of them didn't work, but I had a bunch of people who backed me and believed in me. Really important. None of us got here by ourselves. All these people, they're in my different books if people want to sort of unpack the stories. I remember I went to dinner with Harvey Baskin one day, and he was worth $200 million way back when, and I worked for him as an assistant. Anyway, the short version of the story is I've been peppering him for questions. I took him to dinner once. We went to this fancy restaurant, His Choice in Venice, California. The bill comes for $100. Back then, it was a lot of money. I pushed the bill to Harvey. Harvey pushes the bill to me. I push the bill back to Harvey. Harvey pushes the bill back to me. I pushed the bill. Harvey said, hey, slow down. You got to decide what you want. You want to pick my brain or you want to pick my pocket?
Wow.
One lasts longer. I took the bill, paid it gladly, and realized the power of tapping from the neck up and having a relationship with Harvey. Harvey put his arms around me and protected me and introduced me. This is my dude. That was invaluable. But a lot of people who are in a surviving mode in life, you're so busy trying to get from hand to mouth, from today to tomorrow. You're figuring out what you have to get. A surviving mindset is not going to get you to a thriving and the winning circle. You've got to find a way to bridge these things simultaneously. And so, as you know, I was homeless. So I'd lost everything. I could have gone back to my parents, yes. But if I did that, I'd be working McDonnell Douglas Aircraft. I'd be working my dad's construction company. Those were my visions. I had to take my own risk. And so my parents found out 5 years after I was homeless, sitting in an audience when I was giving a speech. I lived in my Jeep, which, by the way, I hadn't paid the payments on.
Had not
made the payments on. Montero Jeep, and I remember it was Montero West Covina that I owed the money to. I was down 3 payments. So I'd work all day. I had an office. I had $500 a month coming in, Greg. I could rent an apartment, or I could rent an office. So I rented the office.
And then set this in time frame for me. This is
I'm 18.
18, yeah.
And so I'd run the office. I'd wash my shirt and my shoes in the office late at night. This is where I learned to work all day. I'd let everybody leave. So I didn't want to be ashamed. So I'd go in the bathroom for the corporate company that had rented me an office, and I'd clean up myself. And I love white shirts because I could just clean this and clean this. Looks great.
Doesn't show, yeah.
And I drive to La Tierra Airport in LA, which was a little catty corner near the airport, wasn't very populated at night. And I put the car cover over the Jeep from the inside, drop it over the license plate so no one could see, the police couldn't see that the car was hot. Well, not hot, but it was being searched for. And I'd sleep for 5 hours, 6 hours. I still sleep to 6 hours, 5 hours now. I get up in the morning before anybody got up, roll up the car cover, go back to the office. And I did that long enough to get ahead.
How long? How long did you do that?
6 months.
Wow.
And by the same time, around the same time, I was taking the $1,000 I'd get from a marketing consulting gig, and I'd go to a fundraiser for, at this time it was Quincy Jones, I remember. This is my early 20s now. I wanted role models. I wanted a North Star. So the only international people I knew who were black was Quincy Jones and Ambassador Young. I wanted to meet both of them. I did meet both of them. And how am I going to get to Quincy Jones and Ambassador Andrew Young? Well, Quincy Jones would host fundraisers. I couldn't just call his office. He'd host fundraisers for politicians he supported. Well, the entry fee was $1,000. So I'd take the retainer from my most recent consulting contract. I'd endorse the check, and I'd take that $1,000 and I'd go pay the fee, and I'd go, hope I'd run into, and I did, and we talked for 6 hours and became the dear friends. And same thing happened with Andrew Young, different circumstances, but he and I talked for 6 hours. This is our first conversation. 6 hours with Quincy, 5 hours with Ambassador Young, and I'm a brother with Quincy now, and a surrogate son to Ambassador Andrew Young. So my problems have been gateways to my promise, and I tell people, don't avoid legitimate suffering. It also gives you empathy for people who are struggling, because we're all very lucky. I mean, we're all very lucky. We're so blessed to even have the problems that we have. So if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plan. There was a riot in 1992 in South Central LA.
I remember that.
The Rodney King riots. And I was arrogant. I was obnoxious. Discrimination doesn't exist. Look at me.
So you would say that?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
That's why I understand my conservative Republican friends and my liberal Democratic friends. I've lived both shoes. And a Jewish friend of mine, Jewish employee, Brad Billick, who worked for me, said to me, I'm tired of listening to your rhetoric. You didn't have good black parents, John. You had good American parents. You had good parents. And you shouldn't paint poverty on the poor. You got lucky. And he was completely right. But I didn't realize that till later. And I relationship capital. So riots happened in South Central. I thought it was never going to happen. This is America. Rodney King was not a model citizen. He'll go to jail, but the officers who beat him will go to jail right next to him. Everybody's going to prison. This is America. And the officers got off, because to rationalize is to tell rational lies. President Bill Clinton has a great quote. It's hard to get somebody to agree to the truth when the lie is paying their paycheck. And victors write the history books. That was my first lesson in justice. Justice can be just us if you don't have fair play. And somebody plays by the rules.
That really changed your mindset.
Oh, everything. And it was my own hubris. So I shut my office down when I saw the riots pop off, 1992, April 29th. And I had this beautiful office, marble, Irvine Company.
Yeah, you'd broken out at that point. You were off and running.
I was off and running.
Yeah.
By the way.
Which led to some of the hubris, which is like, I can do this, everybody can do this.
That's right. I don't want to name the company that leased this to me, because it would embarrass them probably. But big company in California wouldn't lease me an office space because I was a young black guy with supposedly a balance sheet. And I guess they just didn't believe it. So I'd never told this story before. I went and found a white guy to be my front. I hired this Australian dude who looked, it looked like he was just, looked at me like a $1 million walking in a suit.
Thank you for the compliment, although I'm not Australian.
And I hired him to be my president, and I gave him 10% of the company. I told him to go sign the lease. And he walked in,
He signed the
they
lease.
immediately signed it. And so I'm 20-something years old. It's Brian Group Companies, and anyway, riots happen. I feel like crap. And I go to my pastor, Reverend Dr. Cecil Chip Murray, who just passed last Sunday, by the way, in 92.
Sorry.
Thank you. And he was the headquarters for the revitalization, and he had the Catholic, leaders and the Jewish leaders and the Baptist. I mean, everybody was in the room with Reverend Murray. The Republicans and Democrats, Governor Pete Wilson, Mayor Tom Bradley, looking for his counsel. By the way, behind closed doors, they all were decent. It was only in front of the cameras that everybody lost their mind. To this day, the same thing.
I'm sure that's definitely still true. Yeah.
Yeah, another lesson I learned, right? So anyway, he leans over to me and says, look, this is a train wreck, talking about all the politicians. Take your business experience and go rebuild our community. So I did a banker's bus tour through South Central LA with the bankers I had made money for in my finance business. And I got them to see that the neighborhood they'd been driving by with a driver all these years, these were underserved market economies. And that out of 3,000 structures damaged in the riots in 1992, not one was a home. You don't burn that which is your own. So we were the first commitment to rebuild after the riots. We've always been more about PhD than PhD, although I respect both. And that little commitment of Operation Hope, $61,000 budget was our first budget in 1992. It's ended up being $4.5 billion invested in underserved neighborhoods.
It's unbelievable. The 61,000 came from where?
That was actually a bipartisan grant from Tom Bradley, asked of outgoing President George H.W. Bush. So I've always been bipartisan in my bones. I've served Clinton, Bush, and Obama as an advisor. We have 300 offices in 42 states, hundreds of employees, 5,000 partners. We're the only nonprofit ever allowed to operate inside of a bank branch in U.S. history, which was quite a compliment given what I came from with that banker. Our business with the banks is to get them out of the no business and back into the yes business, by getting the credit score up, the debt down, the savings up of average Americans, and unleashing untapped human potential at scale. And so we're in Wells Fargo, we're in Bank of America, we're in U.S. Bank, we're in the biggest banks, and then we're also in corporations. We coach all 100,000 Delta employees, we coach UPS employees, Delta, soon McDonald's employees on what I think is a civil rights issue of this generation, which is financial literacy. And it's as important as healthcare was 50 years ago. So we're in the workplace, we're in banks, we're in community. We created an emergency financial disaster response policy for the nation after 9/11. We're like the economic Red Cross for the country. We created 12%, nurtured, supported 12% of all Black businesses in this country. There's 3.1 million Black businesses through the 1 Million Black Business Initiative, which is a partnership with Shopify and their founder, who committed $130 million over 10 years after George Floyd's murder. We've now created, nurtured, triggered 400,000 Black businesses in 4 years. And it is doing well and doing good. It's good for Shopify, it's good for our spirits, it's good for our soul, but it's also an emerging market for their business that they need. We all need pipelines for new customers. And I think we got our hands on the emerging markets for the future, which is all the underserved in this country. This economy is the largest economy in the world. Sole superpower in the world. I think it's a light on the hill. I think that God keeps giving us another shot because he needs somebody to be a light on the hill, somebody in some place for the world. If we're not heroes, who is it going to be? With all our problems, America's got plenty of them.
It's unbelievable that you say that, because I say that all the time. I say that to my kids, I say that all the time. This country, the success of this country is critically important for the entire globe.
The world. This country is the biggest economy in the world, 22 trillion-ish of 100 trillion-ish. It's 70% consumer spending. Think about that. And 70% of Americans are living from paycheck to paycheck. So the economy is based on consumer spending. 70% of us are living from paycheck to paycheck. If you're making $100,000 a year, Greg, 50% of those living from paycheck to paycheck, for those who think this is a poor person's issue. If you're making $250,000 a year, a third of those are living from paycheck to paycheck. The largest population of poverty in this country is poor whites, if people thought this was a racial issue. Here's some stunning statistics. So no one's taught us financial literacy. No one's teaching the engines for the economy how to grow or run the economy. Most people confuse making money with building wealth. You make money during the day, you build wealth in your sleep. No one's teaching us that difference or how to build wealth. So people are frustrated. People say they hate rich people. No, you don't. You hate rich people until you become rich because you believe it's a game system, because the ladder is broken and people at the top are not helping people at the bottom, like Rockefeller did, to come up from nothing, which is why I like my friend Tony Ressler and Michael Milken and Doug McMillan at Walmart and Ed Bastian at Delta and all these heroes and sheroes who are repairing the ladder. And Henry Kravitz at KKR was just there yesterday. And you got to protect your democracy and rebuild it every day. You can't subcontract your democracy to anybody. Nobody washes rental cars. You got to be in this thing to win it every day, and you got to own the problem and the opportunity. So if you look at the statistics, very simply, we're the first generation where you'll have majority of people over 65. Those are baby boomers, and they're white, wealthy primarily, and want to retire. Social Security won't be able to pay a dollar for dollar beyond 2034. So now you need the people at the bottom to be engines for the top. This is, by the way, always been in America. Well, the people at the bottom now are now black and brown and poor white. And guess what? They didn't get a memo on money or financial literacy or wealth creation, right? And you've never had a global economy in a superpower. You never had a superpower that wasn't the biggest economic power in the history of the world. We are
100%.
We're both, by the way.
Economics drives it. The ability for us to continue to have the positive impact around the world is tied to the economic strength that we have. The other thing that runs through the fabric of everything that you said is that the secret to the success of the country to date and going forward is having most, if not all, of the people believe they can do what you did and what I did and what so many of the people, even the ones you named, so many people in business that you and I know that create success from a background where it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And that notion of, in the United States, I can do it as an individual and I can become whatever. This is Barack Obama's story and why it's so inspirational to so many people. That if we lose the belief on the part of many of our citizens that that's not possible, that's a huge problem. All bets are off.
It works because people believe if I work hard, play by the rules, do the right thing, behave myself, apply myself to the law, and if I believe that I can succeed or fail on my own merit, that's the game. So I'm gonna play by the rules, but I get a shot. That's the American dream. And for so long, people have not gotten a shot. But somehow, even in spite of ourselves, slavery, just disgusting, horrible, Jim Crow, disgusting, horrible. Women had to fight for the right to have a voice or the right to vote.
1919.
I mean, this is unbelievable.
It's not so long ago.
You know, yeah. So we have, in spite of ourselves, been able to rise and succeed. But we can't keep working on luck. And you can't keep ignoring common sense. And I just think that we're at this inflection point. And we just have to make a fundamental decision again. Are we better together? I don't want to be alone. I want to know Greg. I'm better because I know you. I know
Same.
you. I'm a richer person.
So, John, you've written a whole bunch of books, one of which is the Memo, which was a bestseller. And then you have Financial Literacy for All coming up, which is a central theme to everything that we've talked about here. Released April 16th. Can you talk a little bit about both?
Well, you've had Love Leadership, you've had How the Poor Can Save Capitalism, you've had Banking on Our Future, you've had the Memo, Up from Nothing, which is sort of my personal testimony of how I failed, not how I succeeded, by the way. And this book, Financial Literacy for All, is, I think, a primer for what I call the business plan for America. So how do you have a conversation with America when no one understands and no one has taught people to understand these issues? And when mainstream America has a headache, black and brown folks have pneumonia, but we're all sick. And so I want to give people the dignity to say, I know I've got a college degree. I don't understand money. I know I'm the head of household. I'm ashamed. Don't be ashamed. Let me tell you about my failures. Let me tell you when I was homeless. Let me tell you about my credit score that was horrible. Let me tell you I was so poor I couldn't afford the OR. I was just PO, P-O. Let me let you laugh at my stories and then feel better about your story. And then let's come together and have a shared story and then start talking about this at the kitchen table. This has to become a new norm in America. The world needs America to continue to be a light on the hill. And from this, I think you'll then have sort of peace and prosperity and opportunity that sort of cascades around the world. Here's the way I live my life. Talk without being offensive. Listen without being defensive. And always leave even your adversary with their dignity. Because if you don't, they'll spend the rest of their life trying to make you miserable. It becomes personal. I think that it's in our enlightened self-interest to actually promote prosperity and opportunity and decency in the world, and not just for us, but for everybody.
So, John, on the financial literacy topic, social media is everywhere today, and I know this because of my children in their 20s, whether it's millennials, Generation Z. Does social media help with the effort to advance financial literacy? Can it be harnessed more, or does it get in the way?
When you're being run out of town, get in front of the crowd, make it like a parade. It has been a problem. As I said, social media has been one of the things that adversaries have used to fuel indecision and misinformation within our own society. It also can be a great gift. If it wasn't for social media, I would not have 3 million followers on social media. I would not have 1 million. I have 1 million viewers of my videos a week on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and all these different platforms, which I had no clue about a decade ago, and I wouldn't have consciously went there, but I just use straight talk. I just talk to people, and there's such a thirst for this that I put a video online, and my team does, and the next morning there's 40,000 views, there's 500 shares, there's 1,000 comments. It's unbelievable, and these are young people looking for role models, mentors, inspiration, guidance, and education. I've had to make it bite-sized, so I'll do it. It used to be I talk for 40 minutes or an hour, like this conversation, which is great. Now I do 1.5 minutes. So this is really about building a constituency, a new constituency of the willing, a new generation of leaders who want to do well and do good. And you cannot change the world without young people. You cannot. So you got to meet them where they are. You can't lecture them. You got to meet them where they are, and they are on social media. That's where they are.
Let me ask you a question on America, because you've got so much, you see so much. Entrepreneurs today, maybe younger, maybe not, but when you look out and you just launched an initiative on financial literacy with Sam Altman, so you see lots of people, and you have over the course of your career. Anybody today that stands out as an entrepreneur that you particularly admire, or?
The name might shock you. I mean, I love Michael Arrighetti. Michael Arrighetti and Tony Ressler, I had a relationship with them. I had an idea for a housing company. 5 years later, I grew it from zero to $120 million, sold it, paid them back with their return, paid off all the investors. It worked beautifully, but without them, yes, I was smart. Yes, I executed my business plan. Yes, I gave the return. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, I met the KPIs and the governance and the covenants of the bank and all that stuff. But Tony Ressler walked me into the bank and said, treat John like me. And I'm sure he guaranteed that early note. He didn't tell me. I'm sure he did. I paid every payment. Michael Arrighetti made some phone calls, and we none of us got here by ourselves. Tony Ressler said the future civil rights just might be low interest rates, access to capital, and access to opportunity at scale. And I call it silver rights, from the streets to the suites. Tony is one of those quiet, he owns the Atlanta Hawks now. He's one of these quiet guys who walks his talk. If he says it, he means it. And when I was doing a deal and I could have sold the company for 90 million, not 120, Tony said, no, I didn't get in this deal to make rich people richer. If John doesn't win, we all are going to sit here. And he literally opened it. He put his foot in the door. He wouldn't let the door close. He said, John's with me. He wouldn't let the door close. Now, somebody else might have said, give me my money back, I'm good. And I would have paid it because I had an obligation to my investors. I would have said, well, I'll do a deal next time. Tony wouldn't let it happen. He said, John's with me. Just like Harvey Baskin said, John with me. And my mother said, John's with me. And that banker, when I was 10 years old, said, John's with me. And so my job is to now wrap my hand around all these people who don't have the opportunity to sit in front of Greg.
That is a great...
And say, they're with me.
Great summary. What advice do you give young people today? And I can see a lot of it here, but anything specific you would say to young people today? And an addendum to that, John, is how has that changed over the course of your life? And maybe not, because there's been such a consistent thread of themes and people through your whole life. But advice today, and is that different from 30 years ago?
Embrace the pain. Don't run away from it. Don't over-index at convenience. Only in the dictionary does the word success come before the word work, because it's alphabetical. Help somebody, it'll help you. Meet somebody that you're uncomfortable with and become friends. You'll learn something. Go to some place that reminds you of a world you don't have, so that you know the people who don't have the world that you have. So that's always in the back of your mind. As you're learning and growing, you're taking somebody with you. Be committed to growth. Be completely curious. Be absolutely nosy about everything. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you listen twice as much as you talk. Have empathy and compassion, and don't be a jerk. Nobody likes a jerk. Don't be lazy. Like, love is work. Non-love is laziness. Anti-love is evil. Lean in. Be inconvenienced. It'll help you as a human being. It'll make you more interesting. It'll make you a better partner, a better friend, a better father. It'll make you more interesting to yourself. Be introspective. Become reasonably comfortable in your own skin. And show up for work. By the way, people who are remoting at home, who've been working for 20 years, they don't need relationship capital. They've already got it. Take yourself to the office, particularly if you're a person of color. Show up, walk past the boss's office 8 times in a day. By the 6th time, the boss is like, who are you? Come in here. Like, what's your name? By the way, you want a project? Yes. I don't care how bad the project is, just say yes.
You and I are on the same page on that. And my obligation as the leader here is to create an environment where people want to be in the office and they want to be working with other great people and they want to be helping solve problems for clients. But human beings are distinctly relational.
That's right.
And so you're 100% right on that.
I mean, the first movement was in the fields. It was Reconstruction after slavery. Second movement, civil rights. Dr. King was the only black leader talking to white America. And he got them, half his support was actually Jewish, of the white support, but he got them to come down and march with him in the South. And then the way in which he curated this, I'm here to redeem the soul of America, not save black people. I'm here to redeem the soul of America.
It was brilliant.
From the triple evils of war, racism, and poverty. He said it's good, it's bad for the American brand. And it was compelling and convincing. And that
to everybody, as you
to
said.
everybody. Yes. And so now we're in the third Reconstruction. From the streets to the suites, the field, the streets, the suites. This conversation is incredibly important because I think we're sitting in a moment in history again. But history does not feel historic when you're sitting in it. It just feels like another day. And we have got to figure out what we're going to make of this day and whether we want the world to remember we were here, and if so, why and for what? And was it about me or is it about we? Because Rockefeller was about, ultimately, the last 40 years of his life, about framing the we. And that's what we remember him for.
You're 100% right. And actually, David Rockefeller Jr., who sits on our board and is an integral part of his family, says that to whom much is given, much is expected.
Required.
Exactly. And he says that all the time. I always end everything that I do, every interview, every town hall, with a quote. And I pick it out in advance for in this case, my guests and the speaker. And I think I've got the perfect one, which somebody gave me the other day, which I'm going to read to you and to our audience, and then we'll wrap up. And it's Shakespeare. He said, quote, "Some men," in 2024 we would add, "and women, never seem to grow old. Always active in thought, always ready to adopt new ideas. They are never chargeable with fogeyism." Old world, but it means what it sounds like.
Yeah.
"Satisfied, yet ever dissatisfied. Settled, yet ever unsettled. They always enjoy the best of what is, are the first to find the best of what will be." John Hope Bryant, that is right down the middle for you. Thank you so much for being here today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.